Friday. And welcome to the Tea and Trails podcast. I left a dramatic pause there, Gary, so don't edit that out. So people were like, oh, what podcast is this? Oh my God. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to all our Patreons and partners too. We've got Mountain Fuel Outdoor Active, Vila Forte, Silver, Active Route, the Centurion Running Store, Protein Redall, sportsshoes.com, Big Bubble Hats, X Miles, and Fawnside Farm Cottages. Pop over to Patreon and check them out. Every week we get messages from listeners who are saying they've used their discount codes, saving them far more than the cost of joining Patreon, which we love. You get kit, food, cheeky little hat, little stay at a cottage, and you get to listen to Gary and I Twitter on for a couple of hours. Also, pop over Summit Crazy if you'd like some awesome Tea and Trails merch. Heard it on the grapevine that pumpkin is this season's colour. I should get some feedback from the guys over at Summit Crazy, what the stats are for the pumpkin. Next week, that's your job. Write it on your to-do list. Yeah, I should do. I should do it. Episode 29, and this week we chat with Renee McGregor. I love all our guests, but I have to say this was a real treat. I met Renee years ago at the London Marathon Expo. She remembered you, Gary. She definitely remembered you when you said we've met before. She did, there was a glimmer of yes. But yeah, she was sharing a booth with the Cheer Charge team, and I bought one of her books, and ever since then I have been a fan. The coaches join us again. We bring you more tales from the trails, share our weekly trials and tribulations, and it's the last week of our Fawnside Farm Cottages competition. So head over to Facebook and get your entry in. I looked at comments versus shares, Gary, and I think there's only one. We're one off on Sunday. So people I might have shared it, so that skews it, doesn't it? If the hosts share it. And they're not hang on a second. Well, I didn't share it for that reason. Maybe I should now. Oof. How you doing? What do you do? I am doing... I'm doing well, actually. Yeah, I'm looking back, reflecting on the week. And after my wobble a couple of weeks ago, I'm holding it together, still cramming it in to the end of the week. But like I said last week, I'm just rolling with the punches. And Look at you. Breezy, easy. No worries here, Gary. Once you adjust your mindset or your frame of mind to something, then it is what it is. And everything is good in the hood. Monday, I think I talked about it last week, was a Lakeland 100 recce, and that was great race prep, decent distance. And it was 2 back-to-back days. I did do Sunday and the Monday, but Protein Rebel, Vela Forte, Active Route, and I also used some of the talk gels that the X Miles guy sent over, and everything went down well. No tummy troubles, about 60 grams of carb an hour, and plus calories from the Active Route drink too. So, it was really good. But then work and podcast takes over for me till about Thursday. It's, bloody hell, I can't mourn. Everyone has to go to work. I'm not independently wealthy, so it is fine. But squeezed in my 600, so I did 8 times 600, which on reflection, that's probably quite a small session. It's 4,800 meters of work. I usually go to that 6,400 meters, but that was what the plan said. So I did it, 2 gym sessions. And then on Saturday, we talked about it. I did it. I did my 5-mile uphill treadmill run. And wow, it was tough, hot, sweaty. And the gym I have, there's no real I think those 3 words, that's all you need to describe sessions. It should be like in my coaching manual. Okay, this what effort should this be, Eddie? Tough, hot and sweaty. Get down and do it. It was good. I loved it, and I've come away being really smitten and in love with buzzing. He's buzzing from the tough, hot, and sweaty. What I thought was amazing. I'm a big Garmin fanboy. I think I've said it loads of times in the podcast, but I just did the Garmin setting for treadmill on my watch. I've not got a foot pod. Didn't sync it to anything. I just pressed play to record the activity, and I could look at my heart rate. I just thought the distance would not move, but it did. It started to click up. And over 5... Was it right? I think it was 0.2 of a mile out, over 5 miles, and it was on an incline. So I think basically it's worked out my cadence and stride length over all the years of running, and then it's applied that to the treadmill. But I think maybe the incline has thrown it out a bit. That's probably the 0.2 discrepancy. But it totally smashed it. And what I did love with the treadmill, so I set it 8 degrees, actually. Come on, coach.
I plucked that from...
How high does your gym treadmill go? Because they don't often go... Is it 12%?
Well, you know what? It goes to 10. It definitely goes to 10.
Okay.
But it's not a training plan. I'd found 8 degrees on Google. So that's where I come up with 8 degrees. But I listened to a podcast with another athlete who was running on a treadmill, and he said he was running 15 degrees on his treadmill. So I'm thinking, is my 8 degrees wrong, right, or fine? But I got about 2,000 feet, just over 2,000 feet in...
Well, you want to work that out to your... Well, it doesn't matter, does it? Because it's what your session is. So
2 to 1, that's a good point, actually. 2 to 1,
yeah.
5 miles, 2,000 feet. So that's your Lakeland 100 ratio. That's a good point. But what I did love more than anything, so I could set the elevation, I could set the pace, I could see what my heart rate was, and then I just adjusted it to effort. So when my heart rate was drifting too high, I'd bring it down. So much control. I was just like, I was buzzing. The only thing is my gym doesn't have any distraction. There's no bank of
That's
TV.
the beauty of it, Gary. That's the beauty. You can could you not put your phone? I put my phone up on the old treadmill stand and I just put on random YouTube videos because I find it really hard to watch. I couldn't watch a move on a hill rep. Yeah. I couldn't watch anything, but I just sort of listened to it I put on UTMB motivational. I
had a podcast. I wish I had something a bit more visual. So I think
just to slightly change even though you don't look at it a great deal because your eyeballs are dripping in blood and sweat. Kind of just like having something, or there's a couple of athletes I follow on YouTube that make YouTube videos and I sort of just go through that. But I quite like music too. Music's good.
I don't know about music, but for me, it throws my stride. I start running to the beat.
You can use Spotify and get to the beat. What heart rate you're going to do, and put that playlist in 150 beats per minute.
This is my only grey area with it. I've never formally done a heart rate test. So how I get the effort, the session was supposed to be about marathon pace effort. So I went back, So I went back to
Berlin. Sweaty, I don't think.
No. So I went back to Berlin Marathon and I looked at my average heart rate for Berlin Marathon, which was 145 beats, I think, a minute. And then obviously I'm a little bit older, so I minused 3 beats from that. And it so basically worked out about 142 beats. That's as accurate as I can get it. Obviously, if you did a VO2 max, you'll get your lactate threshold where you turn over into the lactate, so you'll
it's very hard to get exactly that right. Also, if you're on a treadmill and you're in a gym with the heat and sweat, you're gonna I turned into a marine this morning. Your heart rate is going to drift up as well because you get hotter and hotter as well. I love that, Gary. So it's in your armory now. You're going to do it again.
100%. Look, ideally, I'd go out and buy a treadmill. That's not Gary's funds. Don't go that far. But Patreon, I can go to the gym.
Nordic Track to get 15% off. I don't think that would even touch the size of a Nordic Track treadmill.
Well, who is it? You got your Noble Pro, your Nordic Track. There's probably some other big brands out there. But in the winter, I think, for when you want to do a workout in the terrible weather, I'll definitely do that in the gym. And also, we've mentioned quite a few times, I have this 8 minutes up a hill and 2 minutes down. And I just can't do that on my trails where I live. So for sessions like that, it's just such a useful tool in the armory. Yeah, I absolutely love it. So I don't think there's another one planned between now and Lakeland 100, which is fine. You don't want to overdo it and then all of a sudden you start hating it. But yeah, really, really loved it. What else has happened? I've been working on the Tea and Trails website too, so that's coming together in the background.
Gary, you're such a grafter.
I think I said I enjoy doing stuff like that, tinkering away. But
if that was on my to-do list, it would be never reach the top. It would just sit on my notepad to the next week. I'm still got to do that.
Well, that's why we're such a good team, Eddie. That's why we're a good team. I'll do all that. But yeah, when it's ready. But when it's ready, I'll share the URL is teandrails.com. But
we bought what's it called? The domain. We've bought the domain. That's so people that are trying to copy our podcast, they can't get in there. And
we got it. And what else? I went to the cinema. I mentioned I went to see The Flash, and I loved it. But my cinema treats these days are Protein Rebel milkshake and some peanuts. How sad is that? There's no popcorn or anything anymore.
Why would you not have any popcorn? Isn't popcorn quite a good low calorie? It's all the salt and the sugar that they don't add to it.
It's salt and sugar. I don't know why I didn't. No, I'm just trying to be good. 4 and a bit weeks to Lakeland 100. So I'm just trying to focus a bit.
Make good decisions. Make good decisions, Gary.
Yeah. It's we did speak to Jack Scott, and he said, make these a lot of positive things can happen when you haven't got your running shoes on. So that's what I took into the cinema. But again, Durham, Sunshine Payday Friday, it was just full of busy, drunk people, and I just don't like it. I don't like it.
Durham's my dream.
I took a photo of the Dun Cow, actually. I was going to forward it to you.
Do many happy days drinking out of a shoe at the Dun Cow.
I've been doing some research too. I had groin trauma on last year's Lake.
Whoa. This is a family show, Gary. Where are we going?
Yeah, well, that was what I think, well, probably lots of other factors, but my takeaway memory is I really struggled with my left abductor at the Lake 100 last year. Yeah. So I'm looking for some... Do you
want some exercises? I can give you some exercises for that.
Oh, yes, please. That would be great.
Special groin now, we'll do that on a late night Zoom. Special groin eggs. No, it's not too late. I don't think it is too late, especially if it's something that just needs a little bit of, basically needs to know how to work. It's there, the muscle's there, but it might just be a bit...
I am doing stuff down the gym. I'm working my abductors, on the machine where you got your big cable and you put the strap around your leg.
Yes.
I am doing stuff. I'm not doing stuff. But again, it's just a takeaway memory. I remember watching Dougie's Innes drift off up Fusedale, and I just couldn't. With my left leg, thank goodness I had the poles that day, because my left leg had just nothing to give. So yeah, just something, it's if I could get some kind of special compression shorts that did offer a bit more support around the thighs. Right. It's just that 1%, isn't it? Maybe these problems start happening at Ambleside. I don't know. Instead of going up Fusedale. That's what I'm thinking. I would wear compression shorts anyway, so if I'm just swapping out one pair of compression shorts for something with a bit
Have you felt
support.
It since then? Do you feel it?
It's the first time I mentioned it, actually. It's nothing
you've kept
like...
secrets from me.
Well, it's noise, isn't it? I don't want to talk about necessarily.
I know, I know that. It's the same with my Achilles. I don't talk about it until Bryn goes, oh, that's a bit... And I'm like, I know we don't talk about the Achilles.
It's just... I've just been aware of it. And obviously I've never done... I've done some big days, Old County Tops was 9 hours and I didn't feel anything on that day. But some days I've just felt a little twinge. So I'm aware
it's probably tiredness as well. But hopefully if you super rested.
Yeah, but I don't want to mention it because I don't want to start sounding, isn't it? No. And also I need my bloody Sequoia peregrines perished over the weekend. Perfectly fine.
Is it on the toe bend on the...
Yeah, but down the sides, both sides.
Yeah,
on the outside.
I love those shoes.
Now I know the green runners though. I don't think it's those guys, but they promote that fixing your shoe kit. So everything else on the shoe is fine, apart from just where they split. So I think I'm going to go and
get a little patch on it.
Yeah, David a message, see where I go and find this repair kit and fix it up. Look, obviously better for the planet and a lot cheaper than buying some new shoes. So I will be doing that, and that is my week.
So that's a good week. And you've only got one more week training now. And then it's taper time.
Then it's taped up. Yeah, one big week. Got to call it together. This is quite a big week, actually. Mileage-wise, this is my peak week.
Is it? Peak. And then how many weeks?
Well, it ebbs and flows. Like this week, was a bit of a down week. But stupidly, I did more miles than what I should. So on the plan...
What a surprise. What a surprise. Gary did more than was on the plan.
I do lots of little, so what I don't plan.
You do. I see it all the time, Gary.
Run to the gym and back.
Yes.
Run the dog.
And then when I sometimes, in my really bored moment, I add up what people do that are the extras. I'm like, that's 5 hours extra that you didn't need to do.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, I don't do anything like 5 hours, but I do.
Whatever.
Maybe a 75-mile week might, on the plan, would end up being an 82-mile week. It's something that is quite
a lie. It's like a 70-mile week becomes a 90-mile week. You don't
pull it together.
I hear it every day, all day, Gary.
Well, yeah, you do.
From my clients and from my kids. I was going to the washing machine and it fell out of my hand. And so there it's just on the doorway and I got distracted.
I'm curious though, because you don't get the same, obviously, adaptation doing lots of, like yesterday was classic. I did a 20-mile, I think the plan was like a 20-mile run, but I had such a busy day. And this is what I'm not going to stress about it. But so I ended up doing a 15-mile run and a 5-mile run. So
I've done that loads, especially when the kids were younger. I used to break up I would never have time for a 20-mile run. So I used to do like 16 miles in the morning and 4 miles or something like that. Got to do what works for you. I think I heard Sally McRae,
she said exactly the same thing. Just her lifestyle, that time in her life, she just couldn't do these big days. So she'd break them up. But yeah, I'm not going to beat myself up. It is what it is. Literally 4 weeks to go.
Oh, it's 4 weeks to go. That's why you were saying, big week this week. And then, start the downward.
Yeah.
4 weeks to go. We'll be recording on your... Oof. How did it go, Gary? Oh, Eddie, it were brilliant.
You know what? It's really... I just haven't got a clue. I don't feel any fitter than this time last year, put it that way. I know Neil said a few times the races that we've done, he thought I seemed stronger. See, Teenager Altitude, All County Tops, Hardmore's Relay, he's said a few times, you're running really well. Myself, maybe I'm just trying to protect myself, a fear of failure. I don't know, but I don't think I'm any fitter than last year. Maybe the gym is going to help, which is something I won't really appreciate, I suppose, until 60, 70, 80 miles into the late 100s.
Maybe you're a bit wiser too. That's a big thing. You've learned a lot. Your nutrition is better. Maybe your pacing is better.
I think for a 50-year-old, I'm spectacularly immature. We'll see. All that, yeah. Well, this is another interesting thing. So pacing, you could tell me, maybe not on air to embarrass me, what my gap was for the treadmill incline.
You could, Can you not see it on Garmin? If you go on Garmin Connect.
No. I need one of the new Phoenixes and the Endura. My Phoenix doesn't do it.
If I go on Garmin Connect, I saw that for the first time at the weekend. It also shows me my gap. Well, you're just going to have to stump up to Strava and pay for your premium.
I could do for like 1 week, couldn't I? I could do for a month. But yeah, maybe Garmin's had an update. I'll go and check that out now you've said it. Awesome. Oh, excited. Anyway, I've rambled on for ages.
Talking about maturity, Gary, I dropped my 2 smaller kids at their primary school today. And the older one, it's his last day of primary school. And then he joins the older one at second. So then I'll have 2 kids at secondary school, Gary. And I thought, but I'm still 22. This is awkward. And
in my secondary school, all the villages merge into...
Yes, that's it.
So it becomes a lot more random.
They all know each other because, we're in a valley. And so he goes from his primary school, which has I think it's 80 kids there. And of course, he's kingpin. He rules the playground with the football. And then he's going to college where there's 400 kids. But they only do 4 years, so they only go up to 15. So it's slightly less intimidating. You haven't got 18-year-olds there to 11-year-olds. It's not like the schools. But they all know each other because even though all the Valley little primary schools go together, he plays football and skis and knows. So they'll all... And he goes into a sports class. Because he's
like West Side Story, that first day when they all meet.
The gangs get together. I don't think that he'll be too busy. The thing he's most worried about, at his primary school, he can play football at the break times. But at secondary school, they're not allowed to play football because there's too much fighting. That fills a mother with...
Yeah.
I think their playground's too small for them all to play. I don't know what anyway, my oldest is already there. So there's slightly, when the second one goes, it's slightly more. But I did think as I was like, now I've got 2. But no. I'm still a child myself. We all feel like that, don't we? When we to make adulting decisions.
Until I look in the mirror, I feel really young. And then it's quite apparent.
Until I look in the mirror or I see photos and I go, oh, who's that? That's not me. That's somebody else. I look like Anna Kournikova. This is embarrassing. You got that angle all wrong.
A race picture puts not only humbles you, puts another 15 years on you. It's horrible.
You try. Okay, so this week, Gary, I am the August centerfold of Runner's World, and it is just splattered with spine pictures of me. And the only message I really remember receiving on the spine was Deb's as I left the last checkpoint. What is it? Can't remember. And she was like, she said, the media team have just posted the most horrendous picture I've ever seen of you, Eddie. Don't ever let that go out. And there it is in Runner's World for everybody to see. Eddie looking like... Class. I don't even know what I look like. I can't even say.
I'll have to go and buy a copy. Cool.
Go and get yourself. I'll sign it for you, Gary. You're lucky.
Ooh, yeah, what a treat.
We always carry Sharpie. Anyway, let's talk some stats. I'm going to tell you this time yesterday, Gary, I was not in a good way.
Yes.
I hurt myself so bad yesterday. You were worried I'd scolded myself on a pan or something, but it was much worse. It was much worse than that. Bryn and I decided to do a little experiment and get up really early together. Now the kids are older, leave the cereal out and go out and get some training done together. And then we'd be back in time. Hopefully the kids would just be getting up.
Yeah,
and
I love that. Yeah.
And having some shreddies and just starting to argue. The arguments wouldn't have set in until we so that bit worked, but oh my god, I felt so bad. I had not really thought. I did a total Gary. I did a Gary. And I totally binged the latter of my week by when. So I'd aimed to do 20,000 feet. And by Wednesday, I think I'd only done 6,000, maybe less, maybe 3,000. And I was like, I've got to just climb some mountains. And I was busy and I didn't really plan or think about
Where did the 20,000 feet come from? Sorry, Eddie. What
came from my special coaching manual that, Eddie, this sounds like a good amount of to hurt yourself. But what do I like? So I can comfortably climb between 10 and 15,000 feet a week with my normal mileage. So I'm trying to just push it higher. If I go over, I did 25,000 the week before, my knees start to really hurt on the downhills then. So I kind of think, okay, I'm going to try 20,000 might be good. In that, I want the consistency. So there is thought in this. I want to be able to do that week in, week out and still actually get some decent training and not just be hobbling. Anyway, that totally didn't work because the Sunday morning, by the time I got to the Sunday, I was in such a state that Bryn even looked. So we went out together and he looked back and he was like, oh, love, you don't look good. I lost it. I made a few errors. I didn't have any food before we went because we didn't want to wake the kids up.
Yeah.
We just had a quick slurp of tea. And I was like, I'll do the first climb and then I'll have a banana at the top.
Yeah.
And then I was just in calorie deficit, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's rewind to what I actually did to how I got myself in that state. And I do this for you all, dear listeners, because you learn from my trials and tribulations. Not only do I amuse you as you're listening to go, oh, Eddie, but then also I hope you don't do this too. So I had kids at home this week because one of them had already broken up. So I was thinking of ways to combine my training and entertain said child. So we'd won an electric bike on the football bingo thing, for bike hire for a day. And that was a year ago and we still hadn't used it. So we thought we'd use that up. So we hired him an electric bike for the day. And I said, you can cycle it up a hill with me and cycle it back down again. So we tried that. We were joined by Karen and Scott Nicol. Karen from episode 20. Lovely. So Finley came on his bike and we ran up this hill. Chatter. I would say the chat did not stop. I can't say who taught more, Karen, Scott, or me. Definitely they taught more. And Finley came on his bike. And I tell you what, we couldn't afford to buy an electric bike. They're super expensive. But if you were looking for a purchase of being able to your partner join you running or an older child, we went up almost 1,000 meters and he was able to pedal up and some really steep bits too with electrical help.
I know a few people have done that. Their partner's not a runner.
Yeah. So
they've got an electric bike and then it means they can both do stuff together. It's been great.
And actually running uphill, there wasn't that much difference in the pace. Because he wanted to say he was worried his battery was gonna, and he loved it. So that was lovely. So we did that one day, and then I had I had a really late night training. I didn't finish with the kids, and Bryn didn't get home till 7 o'clock. So I was like, I'm gonna go up and do 1,000 meters climbing, and it took me a lot longer than I anticipated. Hadn't planned this is the story of the week. Hadn't planned my calories enough and was absolutely starving because I'd only had a bagel for lunch.
Eddie.
Anyway, it was beautiful. I had some beautiful sunsets. I know you enjoyed my Instagram stories. And
Yay.
then, so we'd done quite a bit of climbing, cramming this in. And then the day before this Sunday debacle, I had my long run in the diary and I thought I'm going to do 2,000 meters. How hard can that be?
Well, it's 6,000 feet, isn't it, roughly? So
6,000 meters. Anyway, we'd had a lot of rain, and so the trails were absolutely, because they'd been really dry and hard packed, and then they would just become like a mud bath. My trainers just stuck with, which is really unusual in the Alps, like stuck with goat and cow poo and mud, and I was just like glissading, as we say, down this mountain. And the thing I was most worried about was I knew Finley, my eldest, had gone off for a 6-hour hike with ski club for training, and there was a couple of really technical downhills I was doing. I was like, please don't be coming up this hill as I'm coming down on my bum. all 20 of the kids and the coaches like watching me going, what is she doing? Because my trainers were so clogged with mud, it was so slippery, and I was like, do you know what? It's just going to be quicker to just get on my bum, do an EV.
Did you have your poles?
Yeah, I had my poles, but there was so much mud in the bottom of the pole. There was anyway, and the weather was like up high, so the highest climb is about 2,500 meters. And as I dropped Finley off for his training, he'd gone, "Oh, I haven't got my jacket, Mum." So I was like, I'll give you mine then, my lovely Montane spine one. And so as I was going up, I was a little bit cold going up. And the wind and the cloud was when the birds start going. And I was like, I'll just put my jacket on for the downhill. Oh no, I haven't got it. Said child has got it. Freaking breezing, Gary. Yeah. Came anyway. I got off the second climb. My watch died, so I thought I'd been out for like a couple of hours, and so I'd had like half a bar and some tailwind to drink. I hadn't drunk all my bottles. Came around the corner. Fortunately, on a good bit of track, so I was absolutely flying. So I think they were all quite impressed with the speed that Finley's mum was running. Finley was there all wrapped up in my lovely spine jacket. You're right. He was like, take me home, Mum. Take me home. I was like, no way. He's like, have you not stopped and had your lunch? And I was like, no. We've only been a couple of hours because I didn't have any time on. And it was 20 to 2 and I'd been out since 9 o'clock.
Oh, wow. Eddie.
Oh, Eddie. No wonder I was feeling a bit hungry. Anyway, ran down. So this is saying, oh, what absolute. Anyway, got home. Lovely Bryn was like, well done, love. That was great. I was like, oh my God, make me a cheese and pickle baguette now. He made me a tray of like 2 cups of tea, recovery shake, 2 pints of squash and my baguette. And he was like, sit there and just eat all that. So I did. So anyway, that day I felt really good. And I think I probably pushed harder than my gap, Gary, was about 10-minute mile, which actually considering, which is not that fast, but considering I came down on my bum down a lot of the downhill, was pretty good. My average heart rate was about 140. So I was working a little bit harder than easy.
Yeah, that's
and
I think
work, and then I went out the next morning at 5 and that was, I literally couldn't. I said to Bryn, we're just going to have to go uphill because I don't think I can run like more than a kilometre. We just hiked uphill. It was good. It was good practice. So like the legs were just like the downhill, my quads just felt like empty shells. Anyway, ate loads on that, and we just decided to stay quite close to home. So when the kids were up, we just did like 3 different climbs, and I was like, can we just like go halfway up the climb so I don't have to do 20 minutes running down for my poor legs? And Bryn was like, no, you must run all the way down. Anyway, we got that done. And then this is the best tip. If you feel like I did at the end of that, and I'd obviously done too much over the few days, I then just spent the whole day eating. You just got to eat. You just got to plow in the calories.
You can't get the calories on the run. And you miss a meal probably. You miss your meal.
I missed a few meals over those days from like training at odd times, out of my normal routine. So then I was like, right, I'm just going to. And Bryn made me like homemade nachos with like tortilla crisps on the bottom, and then like a lentil, and then loads of grilled cheese and guacamole, everything.
I love all the dips.
Oh my God. He was like, how much guacamole do you want? And I was like, just give me the bowl. Let's just. Anyway, it ended up, and then this morning going into the next week. So then last night I was like, oh, Bryn, you're going to be waiting for me at Totre. I was like, it's meant to be the other way around. around. Then this morning I was like, right, I'm going to do a running route. I need to reassure myself that Eddie's still there and I can still run. And I did my loop around. All was fine. I was like, how can you go 24 hours earlier? And I was literally like on it. I was literally had the side head slant and literally like polling up behind Bryn, just silent while he told me stories about football. And then today I was like,
I never work it out. I can't work it out.
What is that? The body is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it ended up, another good week of climbing, ups and downs, still learning, Gary. I still make the mistakes.
I love that about our sport. Even, we talk to people who actually, racing for podium finishes and sponsored athletes, and they're all still learning and making mistakes and learning from the mistakes.
And I get so angry with my clients when they're like, oh, I only had a packet of crisps and then went and did the training, and I'm like, come on, you must do better. You need to be professional. And then I was so unprofessional in my approach and I paid the price. But sometimes we need those little micro lessons like we do all the time. We get a niggle and we're like, should have done my glutes, should have done my strength work.
Yeah.
And you do
even the jacket. You mentioned the jacket. Last week when we were in the lakes, we set off and it was roasting hot. We all had our jackets, we all had bivvies. It was fine. But then when we finished, we were in Tesco in Ambleside and it started to rain. And within about 5 minutes, I had Reynards. Reese, another guy, he had Reynards, and we were shivering and freezing. We're like, we've got to go back to the hostel here. So, yeah, if you ever think about skipping, taking at least your jacket out.
Jacket day, always take your jacket out. And I should have just turned around. I didn't get cold because I just kept myself moving, but perhaps then I'd moved faster. If I'd had my jacket on, I wouldn't have moved as fast because I wouldn't have felt as cold. And then
Eddie, though, what if you couldn't move?
Stop it. Imagine, sliding down on my bum. The other thing was my watch wasn't charged, so then it died. So then I lost track of time.
That would trigger me big time.
It would all be over. I did have to then Bryn was like, what are you doing? Go on Strava and plot out how far I'd run to make sure I got
could you not just pinch Bryn's session? I think you can join people, can't you?
He wasn't. We only did that one, the shuffle together. We don't get to do it long. We're not that bad parents that we'd leave the kids for 6 hours. Anyway, the good thing is now I'm covering more vert than I've done before. All is fine. The body is fine. I just need to be professional, Gary. I'm cramming it in as well because I'm coming over to the flatlands, aren't I? And so I've got 2 weeks of...
Where is Wendover Woods? I don't know where it is.
I don't know either. Who knows? I'm just going to get on the train and jog over there. It's like a magical place where you just get the key to if you're lucky and it'll appear.
I didn't get the key.
Nah, you're not right.
This is our last brew with the coaches for a while. So if you have any questions, email them in to hello@teaandtrails.com and then we'll get those in and we'll arrange a sit down with the coaches and we'll record another batch of episodes. But this week's question comes from Kevin Bowen and he asks, Kevin suffers from anxiety on the day of hard intervals or hill training sessions. I hear you, Kevin. I must admit, it's not crippling anxiety, but I do get a bit stressed out from time to time. Yeah, I'm really interested what the coaches have to say.
This week's Brew with the Coaches is from Kevin Bowen. Despite running regularly since 2007, I still experience a rising anxiety on the day of a hard interval or hill training session. I dread it all day to the point I experience the same repeated visits to the toilet that most runners experience on race day. Once I'm out there doing the session, I'm usually fine. Afterwards, I normally think, what was I so worried about? Is this something others also experience? And do you have any tips to manage it, please? Russell, you're the king of sessions. What do you feel this? What's your advice to Kevin?
So first of all, Kevin, yeah, it's great that you are doing sessions. I really do feel like after you've laid that base work and that aerobic base, which is vital and really important, sessions are the next step to really improving your fitness. Otherwise, we can get stuck in a pace, or we can plateau. And to keep yourself improving, you need to be tapping into all these different energy systems, different intensities and speeds. So it is really important just understanding that these sessions have to happen if you want to keep improving as a runner. And I think we all do. But yeah, it's a problem that I definitely had when I was young and still get it now. So, first of all, nerves mean you care. So, and they can help with performance. You know, it means that it's important to you and that you care, and it can keep you focused on the task, and actually sometimes reduce perception of effort where your adrenaline is up. One thing that's really helped me, so in my 20s, I used to train way too hard, barbarically. The session days were just a nightmare for me. Yeah, I couldn't sleep the night before, couldn't sleep the night after, just way too much stress. Going to Kenya helped me a lot, but now also the science is backing up the importance of training inside of your lactate threshold and training at 80%. And just for me, something like on the way to the track, driving there, learning how to activate my parasympathetic nervous system. So what I mean by that is that the opposite of your fight or flight response is that when you're relaxed. So closing my mouth, I might do breathing from my nose. I might do box breathing, where you breathe in for 4, hold your breath for 4, breathe out for 4, hold your breath for 4. That really helps me calm down as well. But just understanding the physiological benefits of training at 80%, where you don't feel that burn and that pain and that thing that is scaring you, there's still enormous benefits of training there, and probably more benefits because it keeps you consistent. You're not going to go into that red zone where you lose your form, you get injuries, you're exhausted or fatigued, you can't pick yourself up for days afterwards, so you don't get quality in terms of your training week or block. Really believing that you can go and do your session inside yourself and get massive benefits, and then that's going to feed and cultivate your consistency, which is always king. It's always the number one thing. And I've taken that on board fully. It's taken me a long time to, I think in the West, we have this go hard or go home mentality, and if it ain't pain, it ain't training, or however the rhyme goes. And that's all BS. You can really enjoy that intense session inside of that burn, inside of that red zone, and get enormous benefits from that.
You're a ledge. Thanks, Russell.
All right, guys. I'm sorry I've got to go.
No, thank you so much.
Bye,
Thanks so
Russell.
much for today, Russell.
Right, thanks,
Be in touch.
okay,
Bye.
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 Rebecca, perhaps you could explain a little bit to Kevin, like maybe what's going on in the brain, and that's like, is this anxiety? Because I often think, like, if you understand the sort of a little bit of the science behind why he feels so nervous, and we all do, we all feel that pre-session, like, oh, I don't want to do it. Then I think if you understand that it's normal, and I liked Russell's idea of the breathing to slow that response. What would your take be on it, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think certainly it sounds like a flight sort of anxiety response, doesn't it? Where it's affecting your sort of bodily systems as well as affecting you mentally as well. So certainly if you've got that sort of GI upset with it, and I think knowing that you react like that to that situation, I think it would be interesting to know if they have those sorts of reactions to other things. So are they a generally sort of anxious type personality, or is this just isolated to that specific activity? But I think overall, if there is issues where they're reasonably high stress, high anxiety type individual, then I think there's benefit certainly, as Russell says, to working on those things. Again, we're adding to people's training load, but I think for your own life, have ways of relaxing, however that looks to you. I think bringing those cortisol, stress levels, all those things, bringing those levels down in your general day-to-day life may help then how exaggerated some of those responses are when you come up against those trigger activities like the training session. So I think looking at your background, stress levels, busyness, sleep is a massive one, isn't it? That we always have to sort of work on. But I think certainly looking at strategies which might just help you relax in general, hopefully would sort of feed into how you feel about those trigger events. And certainly day before, breathing is particularly useful, mindfulness, meditation, whatever it is. And it's very individual, working out your strategy to relax, because some things are just not, you can't keep your mind on them, or it's difficult. So it's a whole host of different alternatives that are out there. And it may just be something really very simple, just listening to something like music, or just having that time out where you just do that. But it's really easy for me to say, but it's much harder for us to work it into our busy lives. But I think that's the angle I would come from. It's not to look so much as I've got anxiety about that particular event. I would be looking at what's my overall stress and anxiety levels about life in general, and is there any angles to sort of try and bring that down a little bit?
How do I do that?
Yeah,
and I also like the way once I started doing yoga, I really have found that the breathing of that and the calm, and now I can almost switch, like breathe, and I can instantly feel that the relaxation and the shoulders go down. You sort of find that place, and it can be just like a quick switch to be like calm, and you can use it in races. So Kevin, this is a great tool as well, not just for these pre-sessions but also in races, when you can be at mile 15 and it's a 110-mile race, and you can be like, you feel that anxiety creeping up, just like the pre-session anxiety. I can't do it, how am I going to do this? And having learned how you calm yourself down is a great tool. So that's a really great tip. I like Russell's idea as well about framing the session. Maybe do your session a little bit easier. So it's not something that you're dreading and your brain isn't going, flash, I hate this, this is going to be so hard. If you're running with people and you don't enjoy that, then do your session by yourself. Wear a heart rate monitor and purposefully move your heart rate down by 5 beats a minute. So you're always in control. So you finish the session going, I could do another couple of reps about that. I almost enjoyed that. I could stay sort of alive in my brain rather than going to that red space, especially as we get older. I do find that there's very limited time we need to spend in that high stress, high effort rate. Just pulling it down slightly, not only does it make it more enjoyable, you're still getting a lot of the fitness benefits as well. Trish, I bet you never get stressed. You're a super cool, calm zen.
For me, it's all about mental stuff. And I'd say I'm actually not a very good runner, in all honesty, but I'm very good.
You try really hard. Come on.
I try very hard. But realistically, one of the key things that gets you through is mental strength. That's my card up my sleeve. So I would say, if top tips, it gives you anxiety all day, do your hard session in the morning. Get up, get it done. You're not then worrying about it or stressing about it all day. Second thing is ease in. Whenever we do these hard sessions, it's really important to just ease in. So I just say to myself sometimes, okay, let's just do this first K.
Me too. I go, I'm not even going to do it. Let's just warm up. Let's just see. I'm only going to do 3. Just do 3.
Yeah. So trick your body, kid yourself, give yourself a little carrot or something. Ease into that first rep. Love the pain cave. We do ultras. It's hard. It's miserable. We have to love the pain cave. That's why we're here, for the pain cave. If you're an ultra runner, love the pain cave. You've got to get into that mindset. Love the hill reps. You've got to get into that. But I train exactly how Russell said there, and also with all my clients. I very rarely push my clients and myself, I would say, into that red zone. And there's a key reason for that. It's because it takes out so much of you. It really increases your risk of injury as well. So yeah, you want to be pushing hard on your hard sessions, but you don't want to be maxing out. Okay.
I think people get confused, don't they? Because there's all this analogy of hard days really hard, easy days really easy. And actually I find blend and hard days are hard. They're strong. I like to use the word they're strong. So you have your strong days, you then have your recovery days, and then you have your easy days. And I think that flicks the switch in the brain as well. Hard's a horrible word. It's got there's nowhere in my life.
Save the hard for the races. Hard for the races.
Save that extra bit, that little top of the pyramid, that little bit where you've got to chisel, do the Courtney right into the pain cave. You really don't want to touch those tools in training. But, maybe a couple of times in training, you peek in and you go, I know, I get you. I see you there, but I don't need to come in. But I know I can come in. That's what training should give us, that we're not scared to go in.
I honestly think one of the key reasons I can push so hard in races is because I get that hard training right. I don't max out in the training. I know that when it comes to it, I'll do it in the race, and I'll that's my time. This is the time I'm in the race. That's the time to get deep in that pain cave. But yeah, you want to peek in there and you want to tell yourself you love it. It's part of that mental training. Finally, it's got to be one block at a time. So 1 rep at a time, 1 mile at a time, 1 5-minute block at a time. You've just got to keep breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. But the key thing for you, from what you've said, I would say, is try and get up in the morning and get it done, and then you're not pooping your pants all day.
I hope he makes it to the loo.
Which you probably do, because we're ultra runners and we poop our pants all the time, right?
I hope that helps anybody who does get anxiety about sessions, hard sessions. Maybe some people even get anxiety about running with club, going to the club night. It's a real life. So recognizing that, how am I dealing with that? And practicing the tools, and you have the coaches and Dr. Rebecca's full permission to back off and take it a little bit easier. It's all still good training. Kevin, good luck with your next session. Let us know how it goes. This week, guys, you're in for a treat. You're going to learn something. Whatever you think, if you think you've got your nutrition dialed in, your recovery dialed in, you're going to learn something from this lady, Renee McGregor. We are so lucky to have her on the show. What a great guest she was. We could have talked all day, but we have to keep these slots to an hour. Knowledge, wisdom, and with a lot of grace as well. You get the feeling she's not judgy. She's just going to say it as it is and do your best. And she's a runner too. I love that. I love when people are passionate about the work they're in and they walk the talk and talk the walk. Still make mistakes like we all do. A few takeaways to help you on race day 2. Here's our chat with Renee. We are delighted this week to welcome Renee McGregor to our podcast. Renee is a leading sports dietitian specializing in eating disorders, RED, the female athlete health, and high performance. You're super busy, so we are so grateful for you joining us today. And as I just mentioned, we have a whole host of questions. I'm sure we won't get through them, but I know that everything you say will be absolute nugget of gold to all our listeners. So kick back, relax on the trail, maybe drop down to an easy pace so you can hear all these wise words that are coming. But we start our podcast before anything else. We always ask, where are you? What is the view from your window? And have you been for a run today?
I'm actually at home today, which is quite rare these days. I can see a tree outside my window.
Very important.
And yes, I have been for a run this morning before I started clinic. So yeah, good day.
What did that run look like? Easy, interval?
It was very easy today. I did quite a hard session yesterday, so easy today. And I always find before clinic, I just need to prepare myself, get a bit zen-like. So it's more for my mental health, the run today, than anything else.
I hear you.
Are you training for anything? I know people who do interval sessions, there might be something on the horizon.
No, I'm not. Basically I came back from Nepal 7 weeks ago.
Oh gosh, it's that long. It doesn't seem that long.
Yeah, I think it's 7 weeks ago. And I got quite sick. Those people that do follow me on Instagram, I've been quite sick, and not actually related to Nepal. I've just been sick, unfortunately. And I've literally just finished my 3rd course of antibiotics.
Stop it. Oh no.
So because I was just feeling quite good yesterday. And so Damien, who's my coach, he just should we just throw some sessions in every now and again? just to keep ticking over.
Oh yeah, super important.
Why not?
Yeah.
So hence the hard session. But I'll be honest, Gary, they're far and few between. One every month at the moment. So
that sounds like my training.
It just made me sound good. So.
Do you have any spine FOMO? I know you, was it last year you were at the Summer Spine?
Yeah, I was at the Summer Sprint. In fact, I was talking to someone this morning about it, and they're like, oh, you raced it last year, didn't you? I was like, I did the Summer Spine Sprint and surprised myself with a 3rd place finish. Yeah. And I have to admit, I definitely was like, oh, why didn't I do it again? But I have definitely got the full spine on my horizon. Maybe not next year, but soon.
Summer or winter?
Oh, yeah. Definitely summer. I'm not that hardcore. Definitely summer.
They got drenched, didn't they? We've had 3, at least in the north of England anyway, we've had 3 sunny weeks, and then literally the spine week, the heavens opened. I felt so sorry for them.
Yeah, I was actually up north. Yeah, I was up north at the weekend because I was working in Scotland, and I'm actually in the process of moving to Kendal at the moment. So we were up at the weekend house hunting and tried to fit some running in and also some other work. And then, the heavens opened and we were like, okay, It's all good. It's all good.
So, Kendall, then I'm going to ask the question: do you think the Bob Graham round's on your horizon at one time?
Oh, no chance. I supported a friend when I got back from Nepal, and in hindsight, I was probably poorly, and I hadn't appreciated. So it all sort of kicked off after that. And oh my God, no! I supported him on leg one. We came down the back of Blacanthra at midnight, and never again. Never again. Never. I was terrified, like properly terrified. I mean, I would say, I don't live in the north of the country. I do a lot of mountain running. I have got better, and my technical descending is much better than it has been previously. But no.
You do the first chunk of that on your bum, really. I think you follow the shiny bits, the smooth bits. That's the fastest path. But yeah, there's a couple of ways down. You can do Dodic or Hallsfell. And last time I did it, it was Hallsfell Ridge. But if I had my choice, it would always be Dodic. It's a lot friendlier underfoot. Oh, amazing. Well, never say never. Those mountains calling.
You never know. You never know.
Okay, we're going to do one of those hard pivots that we mentioned. You're a dietitian. That is different to a nutritionist. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But yeah, what is the pathway? If any of our listeners are thinking, I fancy a career as a dietitian, what is the pathway and what prompted you to go in that direction?
So there are a couple of different routes in. I did the long-winded route because that just seems to be me all over. But you can do a degree straight in dietetics. It's a 4-year degree, and it includes clinical placements. So you get an undergrad and then you become a registered dietitian. And generally speaking, the most common way in is that you do end up working in clinical practice first. So you work in the NHS and then you build up your experience and your kind of repertoire of knowledge. And then you can start to move into more private practice. But you also, like for me to do sports dietetics, I then did another degree. So I did 3 degrees. I did a biochemistry degree because I just am a bit of a nerd. And then I went into dietetics because I knew that I wanted to do something related to the human body, but didn't want to be a medic. But I kind of had been told by my tutor at university that I had a good way with people, and I had a good understanding of human behavior, so that might be a good place to go. And I worked in the NHS for 7 years before I decided that I kind of wanted to work with less complicated individuals. I wanted to work with people who weren't always so poorly fundamentally. It was really tough, and my girls were really young at that point, like they were 2 and 4, so it was pretty tough working with very sick people and then coming home every night and being a mum, and so it's quite tough. So then I moved into, that's when I did my degree in sports nutrition and then qualified as a sports dietitian. For me, I think I got lots of really good opportunities that I just took, and that has led me to where I am today. But I will say the area I specialize in, we talked about with the intro, sort of eating disorders, Red-S, female health. I use a lot of my clinical knowledge in that. So it's not just if you do a sports nutrition degree, suddenly you'll have all that knowledge. It's the background of the clinical and all those specialities I worked in the NHS that have really put me in a good place to be able to work in this field at the level that I work at.
Because I imagine you come across that sell themselves as nutritionists and almost put themselves in the same bracket as you, and it must rile you up somewhat. But it can be very misleading to people as well, because the word nutritionist and dietitian are bandied around a lot, aren't they, for people to actually understand the difference?
Yeah, it's a long-standing problem. It's not a new thing. So just to give you the slight difference, a dietitian is clinically trained. So we learn about clinical conditions and how to...
When you say clinical, what do you mean? Just for people that...
We're trained in things like eating disorders, diabetes, oncology, max facts, gastroenterology, like your kidneys, your liver. Like I've worked in all these specialities because that's what we have to do in order to get a really good knowledge of the human body, and then how all the nutrient interactions work and what happens if someone can't eat. They have a stroke and they aren't able to swallow. So then you come up with strategies to support that person. So a dietitian is much more medical, I guess. to use. And we have to be registered by the Health Professions Council. So just like medics are regulated by the GMC, we are regulated by the Health Professions Council, which means we have a very strict code of conduct by which we have to practice. And so everything we talk about has to be evidence-based. And, we can't sell products as such. So what I mean by that is we can't make claims that, a particular vitamin is going to suddenly make you the best runner ever without any evidence.
Gary would buy it if you said it. He'd be there.
So everything has to be backed up with science. So you're constantly scrutinizing the science fundamentally. That's kind of what our job is. A nutritionist. So you do get registered nutritionists who do a degree in nutrition, and they are regulated by the AFN. But not everybody who does a nutrition degree will get that not everybody will register under that regulatory body. And a nutritionist who has that registration can work in nutrition, but it is purely nutrition. So it's not necessarily the background, it's not those medical backgrounds. So they can then go on to do sports nutrition, but again, it's very much about fueling rather than sort of more complex areas like REDS and eating disorders. The problem we have is that the title nutritionist is not protected, whereas dietitians are protected. So anybody who does any level of nutrition qualification can call themselves a nutritionist. Hence we have PTs calling themselves a nutritionist, nutritional therapists calling themselves nutritionists. We have people who've done a 6-week course calling themselves nutritionists. And while I appreciate none of them probably do it out of malice, the concern I always have is that it's really different to having a rigorous degree and background in understanding how the human body works. And so often the information they're putting out is then dumbed down and very simplistic. In a way, you're kind of profiting from the vulnerable. And I find that I can't sit comfortably with that. People who know me will know I do shout quite loudly when, I see this happening, because it's not okay. And I think one of the other things that's kind of been brought to my attention quite a lot recently is that there's a lot of newly qualified medical practitioners, so either doctors or nutritionists, who are not going down that path of actually doing the training. They're not going into the NHS. They're not getting those hands-on experience. They're basically setting themselves up as a specialist on Instagram, because they've got that title and almost hiding behind their title. They don't actually have the hands-on experience. Anybody can regurgitate a textbook, anybody, but not everybody can sit and work with people and really understand that, okay, just because the textbook says this, that's how it's going to work for a human, right?
You have to know what's in the textbook first in order to almost then disregard it and go, well, okay, that's not going to work. We're going to try this and we're going to try that. And
exactly.
Gosh,
it sounds like coaches. I'm not a coach.
I didn't say anything, Gary. I said nothing. I make no judgy comments on here. I just nod in my head.
You could get a coach who does copy and paste what has worked for someone in the past, but without that kind of consultation and doing what is best for their customer. Yeah, it's fascinating. I wonder if you are a nutritionist and you have done the degrees, if there is some body or an organization that you could sign up to. I'm not too sure if that's the case. So if you are a potential customer, you go, oh yeah, this person has actually done their work.
You can. So with a dietitian, you can absolutely check the register, and you check the HCPC register, and it will tell you if this person is registered and what they're doing. So they've got a background. And with the nutritionist, you can check the AFN register. The problem is that it doesn't tell you if that person has had any actual hands-on experience, because they can call themselves a nutritionist as soon as they have got their qualifications. So that's where it gets a bit confusing. So unfortunately, and it's frustrating for the general public, because they look at these people and they've got the title and they're saying what sounds like the right thing, but actually it might not be relevant to that person, and it might not be safe overall.
Do your research, kids. Anyway, you don't need to do that because we've got the oracle right here now. So this is all you need. The next 30 minutes, you're gonna learn everything you can do. What we thought we'd do is we'd talk a little bit like through a race week maybe, and how your nutrition plays into that in race week. We're going to keep it quite simple because we want people to sort of pull as much as they can from this. So we're going to start sort of like right at the beginning of your race week, maybe like the Tuesday or Wednesday. You're going to be racing on the Saturday. You're full of the taper jitters. You feel terrible. You've broken your leg. You've got COVID, everything. You feel terrible. You've stopped running so much, so you feel a bit sluggish. And then the literature says now you need to start eating a lot, and you're really not hungry. You don't feel good. Now, I manage this my own way, but I'm not going to say how I do it or Gary does it. But what do you sort of advise people leading in? And we're sort of we're heading into sort of like maybe like a Lakeland 50, Lakeland 100 sort of vibe, sort of race. You're going to need a lot of energy. What do you sort of advise people in that taper week leading into how to carb load in 2 minutes? Go.
Okay. So I think the first thing to remember is that it takes time for the carbohydrate you eat to be made into glycogen, which is obviously the storage that we keep our carbohydrate stores within our body. And we only have, we have a finite store that we can keep in our body. So for women, that tends to be around sort of 400, 500 grams of carbohydrate. And for men, probably more like 500, 600 grams. And that's actually probably still only enough carbohydrate to last you up to 2 hours of moderate intensity. So if you're talking racing, depending on your level, you probably would do more moderate intensity on a Lakeland 50, Lakeland 100. So
Gary burned through that in an hour on the 100 probably.
Well, there you go.
Straight out the gun.
Exactly.
I've got my pencil. I'm taking notes.
The faster you go, the quicker you're going to use that, basically. But if we're working with moderate intensity, that will keep you going for 2 hours, which is why it's so important to fuel during, but we'll come to that. So when you're preparing in race day, I tend to suggest that people think about it on the Wednesday, Thursday. If the race is on a Saturday, then Wednesday, Thursday is the time to do it. And it's not about eating massive quantities, which again, I think a lot of people are really uncomfortable and they're like waddling around.
Gary. Gary's just nodding his head.
It's actually about trying to change the composition of your diet a little bit more so that you're actually focusing more on the carbohydrate and probably reducing your vegetables, reducing your dairy. You still want to keep some fat and protein in there, but again, it'll be slightly smaller so that fundamentally you're maximizing your intake of carbohydrates. So little and often can be really useful. So for example, if you normally snack on fruit, maybe you would snack on a crumpet or a hot cross bun or something. So you've just changed it up. You haven't necessarily changed the volume, but you've just changed it up. The other key thing at this time is also hydration, because if we hydrate well, we improve the efficiency of our storage, in terms of glycogen.
You have to drink in order to store the carbohydrate.
Yeah. So, and again, depending on obviously at the moment it's really, really warm. So you might want to be thinking about electrolytes, especially in that sort of 24 hours leading in, maybe not the Wednesday, Thursday, but definitely the 24 hours leading in. I'd probably be focusing on trying to drink probably some electrolytes. You can't
preload electrolytes, can you? Yeah. Much as it would be great if you could.
Yeah. But it's a really good way of making sure that you are staying hydrated, because obviously the salts from electrolytes help to draw water in. So that's kind of what I tend to suggest, is that Wednesday, Thursday is the day of focus. Friday, just kind of chill out and eat what feels comfortable.
And then you don't need to panic if you're super nervous. I always say that to people on Friday, like that last meal before you sit. I remember the burger before the spine, and I was like, I'm just so dry, I can't eat it. And but I was like, I know that I had my last meal last night, and so it just takes the jitters away a bit, doesn't it? That you're stored up, you're good. And the same for the breakfast on the race day morning, because I know loads of people that just that's just such an effort. And often, but if you know you've been careful those days before.
Exactly. And I think the other thing I tend to recommend is if you're starting the race early on Saturday, then it's worth trying to have your main meal on Friday at lunchtime and having a slightly lighter meal in the evening. With the spine sprint last year, it started at midday, which was really tricky. And so I found I had breakfast and then I knew I needed to eat something before. I was really struggling, but I think I managed a banana, which probably wasn't.
Well, it's a win.
You know,
you're that nervous. That's a win.
So I managed, but I did start fueling really quickly. As soon as I sort of pretty much within the first 15 minutes, I was fueling because it was a long day.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. If you do find breakfast really hard on that race day morning, just have your sort of like, have extra breakfast before you start your fueling plan, like within 15, 20 minutes. Because I think once you start as well, immediately those like nerves go and you're suddenly like, okay, so we're all right, we're good to go. Yeah.
Well, we can move on to that. Actually, the race has started. Yeah, it's a great place to move on to. Eddie might be winning. I'll be high-fiving people and taking selfies. when is it, like, literally? Because I see on a road marathon, I would say 20 minutes in religiously, I would start fueling from then on in, really, probably every 20 or 30 minutes after that. Would that be typical for a Lakeland 50 or Lakeland 100 too, if you can consume the volume?
Yeah, I would be. I would definitely. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see is people waiting an hour and a half. By that, you're depleted. Remember, those nerves on the start line are also utilizing energy. They're also using your glucose stores. So you'll probably find that, you'll deplete a lot quicker than you would in a training run as well. So I would definitely start fueling within the first 20 minutes. And the volume that you take on, I'm going to say, is really, really independent of you. So the textbooks quote this number of 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour. And I want to put this out there because it's not wrong, but the textbooks, the science that has come about has come from basically looking at white, well-trained men. Yeah. So we're looking at the physiology of white, well-trained men. And that's not the whole population that is going to race Lakeland 50 or Lakeland 100. And, probably 50% of that population is going to be female. And at the moment, we don't have the science to really know how different it is for women. So whenever I'm working with women and female athletes, it's a case of trial and error. And that's why it's so important to practice your nutrition in your training, not just for women, for everybody, but actually really understanding what can you take. And everybody's going to be different. There are going to be people who will be able to manage 100, 120 grams of carbs per hour. And there'll be people that will kind of 50 is all they're going to be able to go on. And you have to find your place and also be thinking about the race itself. In my experience of working with so many athletes, particularly over the 24-hour, sort of 24-hour mark, your body is not used to being out and moving for 24 hours. And so it's quite unrealistic to assume that you're going to be able to absorb and digest that food constantly at that pace, at your sort of 60, 70 grams of carbs an hour throughout that 24-hour plus period. I really want to highlight that because I think it's always quoted, and even I've written it in my books, but it is kind of it's a ballpark figure and it's working out what works for you. So practicing. And even although I'd never obviously encourage anyone to go out and do 24 hours before a race, but doing your night runs and working at how your digestion may be different during a night run compared to a morning run, just to get familiar with your body. And that is very much my ethos, is very much, we need to understand our own bodies to be able to make the right choice. So when you work with me, I will set a lot of tests, shall we say, to gather that information so that we can then create the strategy that's going to be ideal for that person. So it's not a one size fits all. But yeah, ideally, you want to be starting that process of fueling as early as possible. And then what you use will, again, be very much very dependent on you and what your preferences are. I definitely use a real mix of some sports nutrition, but I do eat a lot of real food because personally, something I'm looking forward to and I want it. So, it's usually like cheese and Marmite bagels which I eat quite a lot.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But then I like mini cheddars. So I quite like salty food.
Oh God, we can totally run together. I am totally sharing your snacks. Loving the sound of this.
I love a peanut M&M. That's a go-to to me.
Those as well. Those are in the mix.
You can have those, Gary.
But then I do also my sort of my nutrition hack, which I think Bella Forte have pushed out quite a lot, is I do tend to sort of decant 2 of their Reba gels and then top it up with water, so it tastes like Ribena.
Okay,
So
I've tried that.
You're getting the carbs, the hydration, and the electrolytes.
Ooh, okay.
And I did that at Spine Sprint. So Spine Sprint last year, I did that. That was in my bottles, and I had 2 bagels, quite a lot of peanut M&Ms, probably one of those big massive packets. And
They didn't melt. They didn't melt.
They're the peanut ones.
Oh, no, they're fantastic.
Yeah, that's why they're so good.
I think the little sugary shell just, it doesn't melt. It's brilliant.
It doesn't have chocolate.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, I take it all back. Okay.
Come on board, Eddie.
Yeah.
Come on board the peanut M&M truck.
Peanut M&Ms is the way forward, definitely. And I had lots of packets of mini cheddars as well. So obviously Spine Sprint is self-supported, so you have to carry your own food. So it's a bit of a logistics of weight and food and
it's
everything.
quite terrifying, because normally in a race you'll either get checkpoints or you'll get drop bags where you can be like, okay, if it all goes south, I know I can take this, or I know I can try this. But in the spine sort of situation, like, there's not that. So it's like, I've got to either carry everything, or I've got to that's when practice is so important, isn't it? One of these things will work.
That gel hack.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That's what I do. I think I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast. I use the accredited gel mix, and I put like about 8 of those in a soft flask and then topped it up with water. Yeah.
You're a machine though, Gary. People don't think that this is normal. Gary's stomach is like something...
It doesn't really apply maybe to the Lakeland 50 or 100 terrain, but sometimes if it's a technical fell race or you've got poles on, sometimes that stops you from eating. And if you can just take a couple of glugs of your soft flask and with your, whatever it is, 25 grams of carb, whether it's Active Root or Vela Forte or whatever gel it is, it really works for me big time.
Totally. And then when I was in Nepal, I had poles all the time, and you cannot eat because you're, you're like in your altitude. So that also tends to, definitely create some barriers. And actually one of my tips there was I did use a lot of boiled sweets, just the kind of, so again, this is a good tip. If you're starting to feel nauseous, often
that's our next question. It's like, no mind. Well, let's ask you the question then. Okay. You'll race you're sort of like 3-4 hours in, the nutrition has been going so well, and then you start getting that, this isn't like, normally you start to like not feel like taking what you're carrying, don't you? And then you start to feel sick, and then everything becomes no, you become like a toddler at 11 o'clock. What are your super tips? What have you found that works?
Well, firstly, if we talk about what causes nausea, because it can be so many different things, and I think often people blame it on the gel that they're having or consuming. Very rarely the gel. It's usually salt balance and fluid balance, because it is so difficult to get right. And it doesn't matter, how many times you do it. I mean, I would say every race I do, I probably never quite get the hydration right. What I've managed to learn from that is actually having chewable electrolytes that you can take alongside any fluid or electrolytes you might be drinking as a top up. I personally have found really helpful. So as soon as I start to feel nauseous, or I notice that kind of, sort of swishing in your stomach, and you're not absorbing the water, I'm
it's
like,
giving me a bit PTSD.
I know I've not taken enough salt, so I'll then use the kind of chewable electrolytes, because then you can kind of go, okay, well, I've taken 250 milligrams, or I've taken 500 milligrams, or whatever it is that you need to take. Often it's hydration and salt balance that makes you feel nauseous. Sometimes, obviously, it can be fatigue and also low blood sugars. So, we do get in that rut of not feeling particularly good, and so we don't eat, or we're getting tired, so we don't eat, and then our blood sugar drops, and that can affect the nausea. So this is where I found boiled sweets are really, really good. And I remember I was supporting James Stewart at one of the 24-hour world championships. And he, bless him, his stomach just kind of fell apart and he was in a right old state. But, James is probably the most determined athlete I've ever worked with. And he's just not going to let anything get him down. I think he's amazing. And he would just keep going and he'd come back and he was, what can I have? What can I have? And in the end, I was like, do you know what? I've got some Murray mints in my bag. Just have one of those. Because we know from the science that you can trick your brain into believing there's more energy available if it has a little bit of trickle of sugar in the kind of in your mouth. A lot of people use just a rinse. They talk about the kind of glucose rinse. So a lot of
I've heard of that. Yeah.
But actually boiled sweets do the same thing. Actually, it's kind of what I tell all the athletes I work with now is always have a handful of boiled sweets just in case, because that moment when everything's feeling a little bit flat, you can just suck on it, and it might be that you're sucking on it for an hour, but it's just giving a little bit. I
wonder if it's a bit of, because the sucking reflex is like a newborn, like very calming thing, and I wonder if it's like also triggers something in the brain to be like, okay, just relax, this is it's going to be okay. I found Fisherman's Friends were like really good for that, of like Look, no judgy. You've had your peanut M&Ms.
Merry mints. That's where I'm going. And it must be like, when I was a child and if I was travel sick, I would be given boiled sweets. I wonder if there's some.
Do you remember those travel sweets in like the tin that your mum and dad had at the front?
Yeah.
And you'd be allowed like one every 3 weeks. Well, I was, and they'd be there. Okay, I love that tip. Amazing.
That's a great tip. Okay. The race is finished. Any tips?
Did you win, Gary?
Well, I got the age group win. I'll take that. The race is finished. What key tips and how can we use nutrition to recover? We talk about this quite often on training runs, fueling towards the end of the training run, just to kind of promote recovery too. But any tips to promote recovery after your race?
So I think one thing to think about is if you're doing a very long race, and I'm talking about kind of, we are looking more towards that 16 plus hour race, it is worth actually trying to get some protein in during your race as well. Okay. Kind of, it's not going to actually prevent, you can't use that protein in that moment as such, but we know there seems to be some link in that it prevents the breakdown of muscle a little bit more. So I would definitely think if you're doing a long run, then I'd definitely add a little bit of protein. And like I'm supporting an athlete who's doing the 90K Mont Blanc this weekend, and we've been working with him actually taking a protein shake because that's what's worked for him. So he's been practicing for the last few months, and that's kind of what he's going to take. About 9 hours in, I think, 6, something like that. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head without looking at his plan. But so protein can be a really useful thing to take on. And in your training run, recovery is really, really, really important, because obviously you're probably going to go out again within 24 hours or, at some point fairly close. So you want to try and get that recovery in within 30 minutes if you can. Obviously, some people really struggle with recovery because they feel a bit like, just need to sit down and do nothing else. But actually, in that situation, if you can get like a liquid recovery in, it can be really helpful. So something like milk or flavored milk or a protein shake, whatever. But if you're getting a protein shake, please make sure it's got carbs and protein in it. Just protein alone is not going to be sufficient. So you kind of need that carb protein balance. On race day, I'm probably a little bit less disciplined in the sense that you probably know you're not going to run again for at least a few days.
A day, Gary? A day? Do you have off after?
No.
So I think it is still good. It's still important to get the recovery in. But I think, like, for me, I quite like a beer when I've crossed the line, because it's just...
it's nothing.
It's what you want. You just want that.
Yeah. I think it's really important to have what you want. The body's clever, and it will want, a burger or like salty chips with ketchup on, and just listen. And then you'll probably get it, and then you'll go eat 4 and go,
I'm done.
But you just keep offering it. Again, we go back to the toddler. You just keep offering it, going, go on, try a little bit more. I always love peanut butter with loads of butter and toast. Oh my gosh,
I feel it's a gift that I can finish a race and I can just consume burgers, pies, chips, anything I want, chili, whatever's on offer. I have friends who literally can't eat for hours. They're so exhausted, either mentally and physically, and they can't eat. And I'm like smashing a pie.
That's why
and
you're
chips.
a champ, Gary. This is why you're a champ. Just add boiled sweets to that, and you're ready.
Exactly.
Protein shake and boiled sweets.
There you go. If you can't eat, then I would definitely recommend trying to get some sort of recovery drink in.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can eat, I tend to have, like I said, I like it, and it can. I'm really happy with a non-alcoholic beer as well, because it sort of still gives you electrolytes and whatever else. But a cold
always
beer,
working. She's always working.
Cold beer. And for me, I really like a curry, if I'm honest.
Do you? Brave choice after a race.
I know, but it's always a curry. But I grew up on it, so I think it's fine.
Hits the spot. I'm going to ask you, we've got quite a few questions from our patrons for you. So I'm going to ask the first one from Emma Campbell. She's a plant-based runner, and she worries about getting enough protein in for training and racing. She's also a woman of a certain age, 43. Is there anything in the way of supplements that can help with carrying on running later life? So that's probably two questions in one. She's a plant-based runner, because this is going to ring a lot of people's bells. How can we get enough protein in for training and racing? And this is very hard, isn't it, for people to get enough protein in when they're not eating meat? What do you recommend?
It can be hard, but it doesn't have to be. I think I like the
way you spun that round on me. I was going in all negative Nelly, and you're like, it's not that hard, Eddie.
The biggest challenge I actually find with people who are on a plant-based diet, doing sort of ultra running in particular, is the volume of food they need to consume.
Yes.
To meet their requirements, full stop. Because a plant-based diet does generally tend to be quite high in fiber and quite voluminous, it can be quite difficult to fundamentally get enough in. And that is probably the biggest challenge I see when I'm working with people who do plant-based. But with some clever planning and some good choices, you can definitely get what you need. When it comes to protein, like there's some really good plant-based sources of protein. So things like tofu, tempeh, sort of the soya-based products, they are really, really good. And they actually have pretty much the same amino acid profile as, your eggs and your meat and your fish. So they're always a really good choice. But we also know that if you mix and match, if we want to call it that, so you get your grains and your pulses, and you have those throughout the day, again, you're going to get all the amino acids that you need to kind of build and repair. What can be useful for plant-based runners is using something like a pea protein or a soya protein that you can kind of mix up with oat milk to get that extra hit of recovery. Can be quite useful, particularly if you're older. So obviously, as we get older, as we move into our 40s and 50s and beyond, our requirements for protein do go up, because we do tend to need more for recovery, but also to maintain our lean muscle mass. I would say anybody who's in that sort of age bracket and beyond, you probably do need to concentrate on ensuring you're getting sufficient protein and regularly throughout the day. That's the key thing as well. It's not just having it all in one go. It's actually ensuring you're getting it regularly throughout the day. So that can be a little bit more challenging for people on a plant-based diet, but it's not impossible. But
it's just planning. You just have to be really mindful of your meal plans, don't you? But I agree, especially if you're busy, you've got family, you've got work, having a backup of that sort of protein powder that you can use is so helpful. If you think, oh God, what have I eaten today?
Yeah, I take a protein powder once or twice a day. I'm not a plant-based athlete, but try not to eat much meat if possible. And it's the only way I can really do it without consuming a massive amount of food to get that protein. It's a big
I can just consume the massive amount of food. Bryn every 2 or 3 days makes me a massive different based curry with tofu in, with loads of grains, lentils, and basically I'm really boring and I just eat that until it's empty, and then I go, can you fill it up again for me? Talking about sort of protein powder, can we touch a little bit on supplements? Gary and I, we personally experiment on ourselves for the podcast on various different supplements, what works, what doesn't. What are your thoughts on supplements? Do you have any must takes, don't takes in your sort of toolbox?
Again, the science around supplementation is very clear that if your body is deficient in something, then taking a supplement can definitely benefit. So, for example, if you're low in iron, 100%, you probably need to consider consuming an iron supplement, particularly if you're not eating red meat, because that is the best source. And sometimes some people just really struggle with absorption of iron, full stop. There are a number of factors that can impact impact your absorption of iron. So if your, gut biome isn't quite as varied as it needs to be, then that can impact your absorption of iron. If you're a female and you're on hormonal contraception, that can actually interfere with your absorption of iron. So things like tea and even actually a plant-based diet can interfere with our absorption of iron. So sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you might need to take a supplement, and there's no problem with that at all, from that point of view. The supplements I always recommend will be vitamin D, 100%. Mm-hmm. Those of us that are in the Northern Hemisphere and those of us that are very active, because vitamin D is so important for our muscular recovery and for our immune health and our bone health. So that's an absolute definite. And then if you are plant-based, and I would put both vegans and vegetarians in that, then I would also probably encourage an omega-3. Some sort of algae omega-3 type plant supplement, because we know again that omega-3 has got some really important properties for our brain health, for our cardiovascular health, but also for our recovery from exercise. Apart from that, it will very much be dependent on what the individual is trying to achieve and what they might need. So for example, if I have a client that is known to me and I know they have low bone density for various reasons, for whatever reason that might be, then I may encourage them to start taking collagen, because there's some really good evidence, particularly as we get older as well, that collagen could be a useful supplement to take. Similarly, sometimes like when I'm working with ballet dancers, particularly some of the male ballet dancers, they do a lot of repeated movement. So this is not really endurance running, repeated jumping.
Super interesting though.
And so in those cases, we may use a sort of a short course of creatine to kind of support that. But like all of these, I would say you probably should go and speak to somebody who knows what they're doing to get the dose right and the timing right. And it's not something you need to be on for a long.
No, yeah. It's really interesting. And I found that I like to supplement, like I know if I'm doing a lot of downhill running, if my focus is up and downhill work, then I find creatine really helps, because it's the repetitive of that is the downhill that kills everything. And I found that really helpful. I think people like looking at what they're doing and perhaps then going like, or also after a massive event that you've done like 100-mile or something really important, then perhaps your body's exhausted to think, well, how can I support it? But because you start taking a supplement, you don't need to take a supplement. It's not then forever. It's about thinking about how you're fitting in with your training. So Gary, you don't need to stay on the creatine forever.
One thing you could try for that same process without, like, as a different alternative is Cherry Active. So there's lots of really good evidence that taking Cherry Active, and the thing about Cherry Active is the idea is you take it sort of 5 days leading into your race, you take it over the race, and then you take it 2 days after. And the evidence suggests that it reduces that kind of oxidative stress on your muscles. So you're less likely to get as much damage, and then less likely to get DOMS, and you recover much quicker. Ooh. So that is something.
Gary, find out, get them on the podcast, sign them
That's
up.
Going to be in my drop bag too, a deal means of Cherry Active. I'm glad you mentioned collagen, because that, as soon as we Eddie and I both on a bit of a collagen experiment, and it does spark debate, just the word collagen. But I have to say, personally, for me, it has been fantastic. It has been fantastic.
And I think the thing with all of these things, so with collagen, the protocol is quite specific, and the dosage is quite specific. So I think it's one of those things that if you just took it without any guidance, then it might not necessarily support. But actually the evidence is quite clear in terms of its use, particularly as we get older, because our sort of cross bridges and cross links within our tendons get quite tight, and so we're more susceptible to develop.
I think
people should really give it a go. I think the product we use, I think it said use it for 42 days to see if it actually works. And I see people maybe buy, say, 1 or 2 tins, and that just isn't long enough potentially anyway to see if it works. So yeah, we really need to give it a good chance. We've got another question actually from a Patreon. We've partly answered this actually, but yeah, Janet Cross asks, does Renee have any specific nutrition advice for female endurance runners going through perimenopause, menopause, and post-menopause?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. The science out there on women is rubbish.
What, talking about anything, doesn't even need to be nutrition, just generally the science on women. If men had to have babies, then gosh, wouldn't science be a different place?
Yeah.
We know there was a study that was done earlier this year, and it showed that only 6% of studies on sports science have been done on women. And so that's on women of a certain training age anyway. So when it comes to this population group, the sort of perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, there is no information out there at the moment on how we manage this well. That said, again, it's my job to look at the data and look at observational data as well, and try and pull together some guidance. And I work with a really good endocrinologist who is an absolute whiz in this area. And between us, we've sort of come up with certain guidance to help individuals who want to stay active and are going through this. So some of the key things are the protein aspect. So definitely sort of looking at increasing your protein, and also potentially thinking about collagen could be a good option from an injury prevention point of view. You may also, know, so I'm sort of slightly stepping on your toes a little bit, but you may also need to consider your training load, and generally might need to think about reducing run training but increasing resistance training. So you're still doing a good volume, but we know that resistance training can be really supportive of lean muscle mass, bone health. So these are all things that are going to be declining, unfortunately, as we go through this phase. A misconception is a lot of women stop eating carbs, and actually when estrogen is failing, so when we are starting to have this decline in estrogen, you actually become more dependent on carbohydrate because you become more like a man. So actually you need more carbohydrates, particularly if you want to maintain your level of intensity and volume. You definitely don't need to be avoiding. But remember, carbohydrates come in all sources. So we're talking about whole grain carbohydrates. We're talking about, your sweet potatoes, your potatoes, your oats, your rices, your pastas. We're not talking about necessarily loads of chocolate and sugar and biscuits.
Because your body responds differently, doesn't it, to that sugary carbohydrate as you get older. I remember when I used to do Ironman when I was like in my early 20s, and I could just shove down Gatorade like it was going out of fashion, and I could just ride the sugar train all day, every day in training. It was super easy. And now you have to be a bit more mindful about the actual carbs that you're putting in and the effect that those sugar spikes can have.
And then the other thing I would say is that there's some really good evidence that I've presented recently looking at HRV, so your heart rate variability. And obviously Garmin has got that covered on all models now, but the heart rate variability being like the time between beats of your heart. And that is telling us more about our nervous system and the kind of stress we're under and how our body responds to stress. And obviously training is still a stress. So I think for a lot of women going through perimenopause and menopause, it can be a really good tool for guidance. I wouldn't say use it as an absolute, but it can be a really good tool for guidance to make sure you're not overdoing the training, but you're also not letting your fitness slip because of the phase you're in. And one key tip is actually staying active has shown to reduce your perimenopausal symptoms. The exception being hot flushes, unfortunately. For some reason, some people are just genetically more susceptible to those, and we don't know why. Again, that's definitely something that needs to be explored, and hopefully science is emerging. We are doing more studies around this, so fingers crossed we'll get some more information. And what I would say is at this age, don't be fearful of potentially thinking about HRT. A lot of women are really scared of HRT because of some of the media stories that came out, but it's important to remember that we are now living much longer than we were previously. We are being active much longer than we've ever been, particularly women, going into their 70s and even 80s, kind of still staying active. And the study that was done was actually quite misconstrued because it was saying that you increased your risk of breast cancer, but they looked at women who are in their 60s, and your level risk increases anyway as you get older. I would really, really, for women who want to stay active and women who want to maintain their performance, HRT is definitely worth considering. It's not going to work for everybody, but it's definitely something I wouldn't I would go and have a conversation with your GP about. And there's lots of different options. So you don't have to just kind of accept the first thing that's been given to you, play around with it and get the right fit for you.
If you're interested in this, we did a interview a couple of months back, didn't we, with Dr. Siobhan Brennan. She's a menopause expert, and she gave really good advice on what to go to your doctor with, how to understand your symptoms, how to prepare because she said the biggest thing is that if you go to prepared to your doctor with educate yourself, because I know that HRT in the UK has been quite hard to get hold of. Doctors are not prescribed. Lots of athletes will go to their doctors with all the symptoms, and doctors will say no. And so jump back into that episode if this is something that you're thinking, I want to know more, and there's heaps of information in that episode as well.
Great tip for the heart rate variability too. If your Garmin device has it, turn it on. I need to wear my watch at night to get that information.
There's an app that I use for called HRV Adaptability, I think it's called. We can put it in the show notes, Gary, and you take your heart rate every morning and it will track it for you if you are not so lucky to have a Garmin, or you don't want to wear your watch at night, because True. I don't like to wear my watch at night.
But it really does mirror. If I look back at how it's, say, maybe if I've been pooling, I just check the heart rate variability on Garmin. It's like, it actually stacks up. It's spookily accurate. It's amazing. It's
the only thing that is accurate on a Garmin of all that stuff it tells you. Reese Turnbull, last question we've got for you, Renee, from our patrons. My question is, what are the benefits of a keto style of fueling for an ultra distance event?
There are none.
we guess that might be the answer.
We got to ask them.
Yeah, no, I think.
What are the thinkings behind it? Because it was a big thing for a little while, wasn't it? That this keto, and there were quite a lot of high-profile male runners saying that this is the way to go. But then it soon got sort of like, this is a disaster waiting to happen.
This is a perfect example of someone without any credibility and qualifications getting information and then dumbing it down to make it sound.
We're not talking about you, Reese, who answers this question. This is the person who we're talking. We won't name who.
So basically the concept behind it is that obviously, like we said, you have a finite store of carbohydrate. But we have a big store of adipose tissue, so fat in our bodies. And if we can utilize some of this fat more efficiently, then we potentially can do endurance for a lot longer. So it does make sense and absolutely makes sense. But what was not considered is that actually when we train as endurance athletes, we are constantly improving our ability to use more fat for fuel anyway. We're always using both fat and glucose, and obviously the faster we go, we then become more dependent on glucose, but we're constantly using both fat and glucose. That's normal. And actually the more training you do, particularly the more longer runs you do, you become more efficient at generally using fat for fuel. So the idea of removing carbohydrate from your diet was that basically there'd be no carbohydrates, so you would only be dependent on fat for all your fuel. But the problem with it is that it actually reduces your running economy. So you end up becoming quite inefficient at running. And also you are, to a certain degree, limited by pace, because without being able to respond, like the carbohydrate is the fuel that the body likes, and it is broken down the easiest. So it basically delivers fast, and fat is not fast at delivery. It takes, it's quite a complicated procedure. So you're kind of limited by pace. Although people might say they have more energy for longer, they are, they might not necessarily be getting the true potential of their of their ability. But the other thing is that there's been quite a lot of negative health consequences associated with keto diet. So we know that it affects the gut biome, so it can reduce your gut permeability, so you actually end up with more stomach issues and stomach distress. But also, if you have a poor gut biome, you're not going to be absorbing nutrients as well. That can affect your mental health. It has a real negative impact on our bone health, because actually carbohydrate in that recovery phase is really, really important in bone activity immediately after. So it can have a real negative effect on our bone health. It can have a real negative effect on our endocrine system, so on our hormonal system, particularly for women. it does affect men, but it affects women quicker because women's bodies are much more sensitive to threat. So fundamentally, not having carbohydrate is a threat to the human body. And so men will get away with it for a bit longer. And this is what we were finding. If you look at the studies, most studies are no longer than two years. And often 2 years was the turning point where things started to go wrong. And if you speak to people who've maybe been on a keto diet, they'll probably say the same thing. 18 months to 2 years is when they start to notice that they're not improving, they're not feeling so good. And actually, particularly in men, their testosterone levels will start to drop. And then that will have obviously a significant negative impact on performance. So it's just not something that I think can be used in this population who are trying to be active. I think there are clinical uses of a keto diet. So we know that it has been very successful in people who have...
For weight loss, has it been very successful?
Not for weight loss, actually, but for sort of controlling type 2 diabetes, there's been some evidence that it can be beneficial in that. But actually, more importantly, it's been used in epilepsy. So that's been the most credible study has been for people who have epilepsy. A keto diet is probably the only place that we know it can work. So there are certain clinical conditions where it could be useful, but I would say for an active population, it's not recommended.
It's fascinating. And I imagine if you surveyed 99.9% of people who are winning races, if we talk about a performance point of view, they probably all...
They're smashing those carbs. Yeah. They're smashing their Velo Forte. They're smashing their Velo Forte gels. Yeah. And gel shots. We're big fans of the Velo Forte on the podcast, and we know that you are too. What's your fave? What do you use? What do you love? And why do you love them so much? I just love them because they taste so good.
Well, no, I really like Velo Forte because the taste obviously is a big feature, but I think one of the key things I like is that they are a real food product, but they've done a really good job of sports nutrition. So what I find is that a lot of companies that try and be sort of natural and healthy, they remove things like the sugar, which is what we need when we're in these situations, because that's what our body's demanding. Yeah. And I think what Velo Forte have done is that they've used really good sources of the nutrients our body needs to create these sports products, but actually do taste good. So you're not feeling that nausea, you're not getting that kind of, sort of tired palate of using the same thing. So my favorites, obviously Reba gel. I also love the caffeine gel. Like it's definite. I always have at least one caffeine gel in a race.
A day.
But I love the coffee flavor. Like again, it's really...
Do you? I found the coffee flavor a bit of a whoop, but then I'm not a coffee drinker. So it's
I love coffee. So I absolutely love the gels. I really like the mocha bars. I tend to eat those anyway. Like even when I'm traveling, they're always in my bag.
I just eat them with a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so yummy. What did I have earlier on? I can't remember the name of it. It was apricot and fennel. And I just thought, I don't think I'm going to like this, but it was really yummy too. It was good. Like almost like a licorice to it. It was good.
Yeah. So I like the mocha bars. And I do like their new chew. I said new. They're not that new anymore, but I like the chews, like the Mellors and the citrus. So I do love their, like I said, I tend to mix it up. I wouldn't just rely on it. I do like real food. But I think if I'm going to make a choice, it tends to be, it does tend to be Velo Forte generally.
Yeah, it's good enough for Renee. It's good enough for us, Gary, eh?
Yeah, 100%.
Gosh, thank you so much. We could talk. But the biggest takeaway is I'm adding boiled sweets to my food.
100%. There's going to be boiled sweets and a protein shake.
That's how I'm going to get Bryn up those climbs in Tot Dret. I'm just going to litter it with boiled sweets, different flavors, till our tongues are raw.
You've got a great test actually on your website, Renee.
We both did it.
We both did it. I need to be more mindful is my result from your test. So if people want to head over to reneemcgregor.com, they can do the test too if they think they might need some help out there. Yeah, definitely check it out. It was good. It was really, I did it with my wife over my shoulder just so I made sure I wasn't lying with my answers. She could call me out. But yeah, be a bit more mindful. It was great.
Good.
Cool. Should we do the quick 5 questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. Right. Okay. We could not ask you, sorry, What would you cook Eddie and I if we popped round your house for tea?
Oh, that's easy. It'll be a 3-bean chili with rice and tzatziki. I know it's like a bit of a mix of fusion.
No, I am all over that. Often, really, people answer this and they go like steak and something, and I'm like, not coming, don't want to come, but I come round. In fact, we wouldn't tell Gary, and I just come round and eat.
Well, meat can eat veggie, can't they? But a veggie obviously can't eat a steak, so it's I'm happy with that. I think we've already answered this, but I will ask it anyway. Favorite trail snack?
Bagels. Marmite and cheese bagels.
We've got all our questions are food themed so far. We should have been a bit more adventurous. Okay. I'm not too sure if you're familiar with the program I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out over here, but you're on it. You're in the final 3 and you can pick your luxury meal for camp. What is it going to be?
Oh my goodness. It'll be something spicy. I really like spicy food. So either Thai or we've got a really, really nice Vietnamese place here.
Oh, nice.
And it is so good. So it's definitely something spicy.
Yes, choose something really spicy. And also other people might not like spicy stuff and you get more to eat.
Okay. ITV production team are on the phone and they're hitting you up for either Generation Game, Blankety Blank or Stars in Their Eyes. What do you say yes to?
Probably Stars in Their Eyes.
Yes. Who would you be? Who would you be?
Oh my God, who would it be? Well, I'm quite partial to singing Madonna because I'm from
that is a bold. I mean, you're not just coming out. You're not Dolly Partoning. You're coming, which Madonna song?
Yeah, which era?
Oof. Well, we were in the car, obviously at the weekend, driving back from the lakes, and I was definitely singing along to Like a Prayer.
Oh, good. You've got all the movements too, haven't you?
Exactly. But also La Isla Bonita. I mean, Madonna is always on our playlist.
I love it.
I wonder if this is going to be. I wonder if this is going to be a next answer to this next question too. Every week we share the podcast over on Instagram, and you get to choose the Instagram music. Renee, what's it going to be?
Okay, so I've actually chosen a slightly different song because it's got a bit of meaning to it. So I wanted to share it. So
thought and meaning, you're our favourite guest.
So it's basically Run Boy Run. And I'm just getting the artist because it is something I listen to.
I'm going to find it too.
And it was basically when you're doing Mustang Trail Race, you get to sort of day 6 and you run across this amazing plateau, and honestly words can't do justice, but I was all running all on my own and I had my headphones in. I don't normally run with music, but I just kind of wanted to capture the moment, so I had my headphones in, and this track, so my daughter had made this playlist for me, and this track came on, and it was Run Boy Run by
is it Woodkid?
That's it, yeah, Woodkid. And I was running along and I felt epic. Bearing in mind, I was at like 4,500 meters and I'd been like climbing up and not breathing. And I ran across this plateau with this music, this song in my head. And I was like, yeah, I am amazing. Yes. There you go. That's the one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I feel epic. Yeah. Oh, it's one of my faves. And now we know the story too.
Yeah. So I genuinely felt like the best runner in the whole world for about 10 minutes. And then I was like, I'm exhausted. I can't do it.
It sounds like one of those places where you take a picture and it just never can do it justice.
Genuinely can't. It's although you're in the mountains and you're in the Himalayas and you've got like these ice top mountains as you would expect, Mustang is also very canyon like, so you've got this real kind of contrast of canyon with a white topped mountain behind it, and it's just something else, to be honest. It's just, I felt very, very privileged and lucky that I got to go. It was on my list for 4 years, and I just feel so grateful that I got there and was able to complete the race and come back in one piece. So, feel very, very fortunate.
What a treat. What a treat.
We are super fortunate to have had an hour of you. Thank you so much after such a busy day as well for keeping it simple for Gary and I, but some real words of wisdom.
Some
and
nuggets. Brilliant.
Absolute gold in that. Gary will be listening to that 6 more times and making more notes.
Getting the downloads up.
Good luck with the house potential move. And Gary's available for any Lakeland and Lake District, Bob Graham round, any sort of adventure. He's your man.
Brilliant. I will definitely be in contact, Gary.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Take care.
Take care.
Oh my goodness, that was awesome. So much knowledge and wisdom shared. And I feel a bit bad that I've kind of narrowed it down to 2 takeaways of all that knowledge shared. But yeah, for me, definitely 100% Lakeland 100, I will be carrying a bag of boiled sweets and a protein shake will be waiting for me at Dale, Maine too. So much to take away there. Thanks, Renee. Really enjoyed our chat. Tales from the trails. I've got to think every week now because I did my Strava. I've got to do
bring the game, Gary. Everyone loves the international accents. That was actually a proper accent, though.
Oh, top of the charts. Well, I'm not going to mention it. He's actually not top of the charts. But Paul McCabe, 114.7 miles. Oosh, amazing. And again, Paul, I've not checked. Sorry, Paul, your Strava might be open, but I've not checked what you've been up to. You might have done some amazing event or an FKT attempt or a round or something. But yeah, Paul, again, 40 hours and 53 minutes of exercise. Susie Watmore, 19,951 feet of elevation, closely followed by our very own Edwina Sutton. Oof, that's some heavy
that hurts,
flexing.
Susie, that hurts. What are you doing? What are you training for, Susie? Let's share. How are your knees? How are your knees?
But yeah, pop over to Strava and join the club. It's Monday morning. I sit down with my brew, my toast, and I check out the Strava.
I was going to do it last night, and then I was like, no, he enjoys this bit. I'm not going to take that away from him.
Well, I've done it on a Sunday night before, and then I've gone on a Monday, and it's been updated for our international listeners. So yeah, it's always got to be a Monday morning. But yeah, I really like our Strava club. Thanks, everybody. Hi, Gary and Eddie. Thought I would share my DIY Brighton Trail Marathon experience with you. Last year, my school friend and I entered the Brighton Trail Marathon. We were both born and brought up in Brighton and met at school there many years ago. Not being party animals, we decided this would be a good way to celebrate our 60th. That's exactly the kind of thing I do. I love that. Anyway, the organisers went to receivership. Oh, no. And the event was cancelled. So we decided to do it anyway. And I made the journey by coach, Go Green Runners, from Devon to Sussex last weekend. Oh, this was a few weeks ago, so it wasn't last weekend. Liz had done an ace job of wrecking the route and rallying her grown-up children and little granddaughters to be our support crew. Oh, my goodness me. This sounds amazing.
Heart with love already.
We arrived at East Brighton Park to a proper start line, race brief and warm up before heading off. As Eddie knows, it was rather warm that weekend, so we had plenty of water on board, factor 50 and caps to protect our heads from the sun. The first 11 miles were ace, plenty of runnable sections, and we even detoured slightly to take a look at my childhood home. Oh my goodness, skylarks were singing, masses of little blue butterflies on the downs. Was glorious. What a day. It's going to take a twist.
We know it's going to take, this is just a Netflix program. When I start going up, going, no, I don't like this is where this is going.
At the first rest stop, I changed into hiking boots and got my poles as there wasn't much we could run the next section. It was starting to warm up by then, but feeling confident as we set off on the next leg. As soon as we crossed the 827, the thermostat was instantly cranked up, as were the hills. By mile 14, I was feeling faint and nauseous. My friend was rather helpfully pointing out landmarks in the distance before adding, we're going to pass that later.
Oh, that friend that goes, that's where we're going.
After 4 miles of one foot in front of the other at Snail's Place, I wondered if I might feel better if I removed my cap, which was black, and channeling all the heat from the sun into my skull. Oh, yes, that helped considerably. I tried a handful of nuts to replace the salt I was sweating out. They helped too, although it took about 15 minutes of chewing before I could swallow them. Oh, we've all been there. Just food you can't shift. Glad she managed to swallow it. Sometimes it's made me want to puke. I had packed a lightweight towel designed to help with menopausal hot flushes to use to dry my feet if needed, and after wetting it with water, had that draped across my shoulders to remove a bit more heat. Luckily, rest point 2 was at 20 miles under an oak tree in a churchyard. A bit of shade, water over my head, and a packet of salted crisps revived me, and off we set. Ditching Beacon was a definite 1 foot forward, 2 steps back affair, but I made it to the top and wished I had changed back into my trail shoes, as there were some lovely runnable downs. I did my best in walking boots, but it wasn't very pretty. Our original aim was to try and finish in under 8 hours, and suddenly that seemed possible. We cranked up the pace and made 26.2 miles in 7 hours 52 minutes. We had a bit further to go to the official finish, so pushed on even more to try and get there under 8 hours. As we came down through beautiful Stanmere village, Liz spotted the support crew driving ahead and broke the news that the finish line wouldn't be ready in time and we would need to do a lap of the park. Extra lap done. It still wasn't quite there, so we did an extra small loop before we held hands for our sprint finish. Unfortunately, the finish collapsed as we approached. so we veered right for loop 3. Oh my goodness me. We eventually finished in 8 hours 15 minutes, 27.5 miles, and received our medals and t-shirts. Next year we're doing it in reverse at Easter in the hope it will be a bit cooler. Thanks for the great podcast. It is always the highlight of my week. And that story comes from Anita Ray. Thanks, Anita. What a tale from the trails. What, bloody hell, 8 hours. My goodness me, what a day. That sounded amazing. Thanks for that.
Gary, that day was hot. That day was hot, you know. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I've heard that. Rumor has it.
It was really hot. Oh, I love that story, and a little bit of mosh, time with a friend, and now let's hope that might become an annual event. And the story of the finish line, I can just see it, the grandchildren getting it all set up. It's not ready. It's the last week of our Fawnside Family Holiday Cottages competition. What are you doing if you haven't entered yet? Do it now. Stop your run, pause your Garmin, pull over the car. I was trying to say, if you'd like to win a £150 voucher, get your skates on. This is the last week. All you need to do, number 1, be a part of the Tea and Trails Facebook group. Surely you all are. Come on, it's a great place to be. Like and share the Facebook competition post. Gary's pinned it at the top of the page. You'll find it. Comment below that post saying which cottage you would like to stay at if you won the £150 voucher. Hop over to www.fawnside.co.uk and check out their holiday cottages. One winner will be picked at random 9th of July and announced on episode 30. Thank you, Fawnside Farm Cottages, for supporting this week's competition.
We've got a 5-star review, and it's good job I held back Trevor's review last week because we've not had any news.
What? Guys, come on.
I went up a podcast, and it said we only had 3 reviews. So I think that might be like a glitch in Apple. But
they deleted it. They couldn't take it. They were like,
damn it.
This is too good.
It's too much. It's too much.
Too much.
So yeah, I'm going to check back again because hopefully all those reviews haven't gone. That'll be a bit naughty. Or...
Sometimes I just read them, Gary, if I'm feeling a bit low, I'm crashing, I'm bunking on a run, I'm like, sit down, I'm just going to read through the reviews. People do love me.
But yeah, Trevor with 3 V's sent in a lovely 5-star review. My new favorite podcast. Have recently discovered this podcast, and it's now one of my favorite. Fantastic guests and so many useful tips on it. It makes me feel very inspired to take on the next race. Awesome.
Do it.
Thanks, Trevor.
Trevor.
Do it. Okay, we're coming to the end. Is it episode 29? I'm always a model where we're at.
Yes, 29? Gary, it says it. Episode 29.
So what have you got? What's on the cards for this week?
Oh, Gary. Right. First of all, Bryn and I have planned the training together. Who's doing what? Who's doing when? So hopefully Eddie will be a little bit more organised about when she's going to actually do stuff. Kids, the younger two break up tomorrow, and that's it, Gary. That is it. 9 weeks. 9 weeks of summer holidays.
That's a proper juggle.
A go. So we've got, I kind of like planned each week, like with different... We've got a few holiday weeks. We've got some trips back to England. We've got the kids have got 1 week of sports camps. I mean, it just happens that those sport camps happen to be on the month before Totdret when we need to do our biggest climbing. But that just happens to be, that's just coincidental. We'll make it work. It will be fine. And let's face it, living where we are, it's not a chore for them to be on their holidays because there's heaps of stuff that they can do. This week, Jason and Kim Cavill are coming to stay.
Yeah.
Rocking up. Can't wait to see them. Haven't seen Jason since I did the spine. Last time he was here, he was giving me all the tips and going through all my kit with me, and we were planning my training, and now it's done, and I'm going to make sure he listens to every word of the podcast. Actually, I'll just sit and play it and make him sit, and I'll watch him listening to it. I think that's what I'll do for him. So I'm looking forward to hopefully a few sneaky runs with them and catching up with them. I've got a media week as well, Gary.
I know, I've seen this.
Chatting. I am doing a talk for a runners retreat over here in Morsey, an English company, and they're staying up at Lac Montreal, which is a beautiful place. So I'm going up there, and they're doing a question and answer.
Yeah, do you prep for that? Well, I don't know, what would you do?
Am I going to talk about? Don't worry, I think I'll find plenty. I'm going to take the kids and make them listen. It's going to be their outing.
Give them some questions in case nobody puts a hand up to ask a question.
Good idea. Prep the audience. Put them in just random places. I'm a bit nervous. And they said they booked this initially it was we'll just do it on the balcony of the hotel where they're staying, and that's fine. I know that really well. And then he's like, oh, we've booked a big room. I was like, how many people? I was kind of thinking there'd be 6 people.
The O2 Arena.
We booked the arena, Eddie. It's going to be like the Pink Tour. I'm going to have the harness on and do some tricks.
Yeah.
What really scary? What am I going to talk? People are not interested. What am I going to talk about? It could be ask 2 questions and then there's going to be silence and well, we've got you for an hour. I'm going to
some people love asking questions. I'd be terrible because I would never
ask. Hi, I'm a day. What do you do? I do run in.
Oh, there'll be all kinds. We get so many tales from the trails, Brew for the coaches. People have questions, Eddie. Don't worry about that.
Let's hope so. Anyway, so I'm doing that, and then I'm also coming over to England to come to the Wendover Woods Festival at the weekend. I'm sadly not there for the weekend because
headline act.
I'm not the headline. I'm just in the back. I
got a message. My friend shared the picture in our WhatsApp group, and he's like, "Gary, why aren't you there?"
People were outraged. Where's Gary? I'm like, well, sometimes these big bands. Sometimes we have to do stuff separately. I have my own solo career. Maybe it goes like Harry Styles. I'm going to go solo. I am doing that for Centurion Coaching. So I'm doing a coaching talk. It's no biggie, but more. I'm just hoping to hang out with. Hopefully meet some listeners, hang out with the crew. I'm going to run a lap so they have this lap that they do, and it's 10 miles and it's about 2,800 feet, I think. So I'm doing a guided run on that lap in the morning. Fingers crossed if I can get there, if the trains are working early enough. And then there's 100 miles. There's all sorts of different distances going on. There's 100 mile ago and they do the lap 10 times.
Oh, God.
Oh, spicy that. So I'm looking, but I do get quite nervous about these things as well. You're the person I talk to the most. So
what a treat.
That'll be quite a lot of social interaction, and I'm quite nervous as well because I've got you filtering what comes out my mouth when I go, don't put this in. Must think.
Yeah, listeners, There's sometimes quite heavy edits. I've saved the show a few times from both of us. It's not just Eddie.
Well, when you chat with your friends, you sort of work out as you're chatting. You like say stuff, and you're like, "Oh no, I don't mean that. I mean blah blah blah." Anyway, yes. You're always kind on the edits, so I'm looking forward to that, and also quite nervous. I'm going to hopefully, as we're coming over to England, I'll get some. I'm going to hilly load the first bit of this week, and then I'll be hitting the tarmac and just doing some miles, Gary. But I think it comes in quite a nice place in the plan. Bryn was worried about it. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to get our version." I was like, "No, but it's good to get a bit of leg spin, get some easy miles, cruising around some concrete. Gonna have to find my road shoes. I might just wear my trail shoes. They'll be all right." A busy week full of running stuff, a fun week, but also got the juggle with having to cope with the 3 amigos. But they're a joy, really. I know I complain about them. You got a big week. It's
not as entertaining as yours, though. Mine sounds quite dull. I'm looking at my week thinking, "Oh, I'm going to even match that." But
yeah, this one up.
I've not
tough, hot, and sweaty, Gary. Tough, hot, and sweaty.
No hot, sweaty runs this week. But yeah, big week. And then it is taper time. I'm just pleased. A few weeks ago, I was a bit down the dumps and I've held it together.
Such a trooper.
Done what I could do when I can do it and just not stress too much about it. But yeah, hold it together one more week. And then, we all know when it's taper time. I love taper time. It opens up so much more time in my life, which is great.
Just imagine what you're going to create for the podcast. There's going to be all sorts. A rocket.
A Teen Trails rocket.
I saw that Virgin had got onto outer space, hadn't they, in a rocket this week?
Have they? It took them a while. Nobody's gone up to space in that one.
We could have done it. You Patreons, we could have done that. You got free week. Build it in the workshop.
Yeah, a bit of super glue and balsa. But yeah, if all goes to plan, I am planning a trip to the lakes on Thursday. Lisa's working over the weekend, so her shift means I can't go out and play then. So if I can do that on Thursday, that'll be awesome. But then I'll have to work at the weekend to pay off the time debt. It's not good sometimes when your life is so fluid, but then it does work well like this. And the plan is, I don't know, I don't need any Lakeland 100 route recce because I know the course. So I'm tempted just to go more on the high fells. I don't know. We'll see I think Neil might be coming with me too. So we'll see what the group decides. Session wise, if I do it, 1200s. So that's a jump up from my 600s and 800s. And that's a little bit longer. So I could do that. If we get some terrible weather, I might do them down the gym, say on the treadmill.
Oh my God. It's going to be.
There's only me. When I did the treadmill session, everybody else was doing like a warm up or a cool down. I was on it for an hour, dripping with sweat, pounding away. There wasn't anybody else doing it. And the other session is a trail fartlek too, and that is ideal for the Dean. They're not huge hills, but you'll go bombing down some of the banks to get those quads a bit fatigued. That is that. I don't think I've got anything, no cinema trips planned or anything like that. So quite a simple.
You need to recommend because the kids always love a cinema trip when we come back.
Okay.
What's good? What's good on at the?
Well, I really enjoyed The Flash.
What I'm looking for is what can I sleep through? That sounds like that's going to be noisy, and I'm looking for like a more Beatrix Potter sort of vibe.
Well, luckily, my kids don't not interested in that. Nice. But yeah, Flash was good, about half an hour too long. Other than that,
so long. They're so long. I have to go for a wee. Or at least 2 weeks for these big. Okay, right. Cinema recommendations. We started watching. We watched the first Star Wars. I've never watched them with the kids this weekend.
What? One of the greatest film ever, Eddie.
Is it? Well, there's hundreds of them. I had to. We Googled like what order do we watch these in because I don't have a clue. And so we just. Well, I said let's.
Oh, actually, the first one. It's the first one's not the first one. The first one is terrible. Episode 1 is not.
Oh, we really enjoyed it.
Okay. So.
It's very hard to find a film where your age range is 8 to 48. That everyone can enjoy. That isn't frightening. Basically, I'm not so worried if there's a little bit of bad language because the kid's going to know all these words as long as they don't use the words. The language is all right, but you don't want to see full frontal nudity. Well, we don't mind a bit of that in our house. We don't want to see anything happening with the nudity is what I'm saying, but you don't want a lot of violence either. But those Star Wars ones, there is fighting, but it's not like gory, is it? Would I be right? Nah, there's the odd bit.
It's not that kind of film.
I Googled The Phantom Menace and it said, he gets chopped in half at the end. So we were like waiting, but they were fine. Kids were fine.
Yeah, some top cinema. It's like what's that bloody.
Sometimes I think that is so random. Will people find that useful or interesting when they are running along and they've listened to film choices? But there's loads of people with kids that it's hard to find stuff that everybody wants to watch that's not too scary. And also lying around and watching films is one of the only things you can do when you've been on a long run and you want to entertain the kids and drink tea with one eye open.
Yeah, it's low maintenance parenting watching a film. It's great. But we are done for another week. Hope we kept you company on your long run. Kids taxi service, long drives, incline treadmill run, help you get to sleep, whatever works for you, really. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. If you did, please take a look at Patreon. It's the best way to support the show. Thanks to our partners and Patreons, new and old. Be kind to your future self. And don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share.
Stay safe on the trails, run wise, run well, don't overdo it, eat more than a bagel for lunch, listen to your body as well as your favourite podcast, and make sure you refuel with your favourite brew, even a double mugger. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go on my Instagram and you'll see. My name is Eddie Sutton.
And I'm Gary Thwaites.
And that was episode 29 of Tea and Trails.